All right, fight fans, special guest joining us. He joins us every week or sometimes every 3 weeks. And this is from his car. Is it the Bentley? Is it the Benz, Beamer? What are we driving today, Eddie?
I'm a very nice gentleman who's driving me to a meeting. We're in the Benz today.
Okay.
But it's snowing. The weather's not been great at all. Yeah. But we actually have our Christmas party this evening.
Oh, matchroom party. All right.
When
is the weather? When is the weather great?
The weather's like -1, lot of snow.
Wow.
Well, you know what? I think you've been very successful this year, and since you came into American market. But when you go to this Christmas party, what are you going to say? You're going to say that, guys, we're a success, or guys, we need to do better?
I think you got to say, guys, let's not get complacent. You know, we've had a great year. I want everyone to enjoy themselves, and let's make sure that we stay composed, stay focused. And we're not there yet. We want to have fun along the way, but we want to stay motivated. I mean,
stay hungry.
Eddie, people say, when people work as hard as you do, right? And we work hard as well. Sometimes people like to say, oh, I need a break. I want to go out for dinner or for a party and not talk about work. But is it almost impossible not to talk about boxing and what you do wherever you are?
Completely impossible. I mean, it doesn't matter whether I'm talking to my dad on a Sunday lunch, or tonight. It's what we love. It's a passion. And like people say sometimes, oh, you need to relax, you need to have some time off. But when you love what you do, why?
Exactly.
If I'm not talking boxing or I'm not doing something boxing related, I'm probably not as happy as I would be if I was. So, it's a lifestyle. It really is.
Well, Eddie, hopefully you watched a lot of boxing this weekend. Obviously, you were at the George Warrington fight. I'm not sure if you caught clips of other fights, but I want to ask you a question before we get into Josh Warrington Lopez, which was a phenomenal show, great performance. There's a clip. Teofimo Lopez had a very close fight against Sandor Martin. He got the nod. There's a clip that's going around the internet of them catching him saying to himself, "Man, do I still got it? Do I still have it?" There was, I guess, a lack of confidence, some mental breakdown at that moment. You as a promoter, let's say somebody you're close to, like AJ, if you hear him say something like that, if you hear Teofimo saying that, what's the first thing that you say then?
Well, the first thing is if you start doubting yourself in any form of life, it's a problem. But if you start doubting yourself in boxing, it's a big problem. It's poor matchmaking from top rank, but at the end of the day, you've got to be able to beat all styles, and it was a late replacement. Sandor Martin is not a good guy to fight when your confidence is in trouble, right? And it's unquestionable that Teofimo's confidence is in trouble, right? Coming off the back of the Kambosos fight, which I don't think he was 100% for, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but he's got to get a new team of people around him. I like his dad, but it's just, I just don't think it works. You've got a strange setup there between two guys that sort of, it's not delusion because he's an excellent fighter, but you've got to get him in a proper training camp with proper trainers and people close to the team might find that disrespectful because what does he know? And I'm just telling you from what I see. But I just don't think that's working. And I can't see him beating any top guys at 140 pounds right now. Regis Prograis, I think, would do a number on him. Josh Taylor. And he's a fantastic fighter, but he is showing mental frailties. And that was a good example. But I will say that Sandor Martin is the kind of guy, the kind of style that would make you doubt yourself. Look, he did beat Mikey Garcia. A lot of people felt he beat Teofimo. So, I'm sure he'll be back, but certainly it doesn't look like he's firing on all cylinders.
I think a lot of fighters, or maybe most fighters, doubt themselves at the end of a fight if the fight didn't go their way, or if it's a very, very tough fight when they thought they was going to win easily, But I think in this particular time, Teofimo Sr. has done some things that made us question his authority in Teo's life, and should he be the guy? But this particular fight, if you listen to what he was saying in the corner, he was telling him to do kind of like the right thing. He was telling him to jab, he was telling him to relax. He was telling him the things that probably would have helped in the fight But like you said, Sandor Martin's just not that guy. He's just not that guy that you're going to look great against, especially when you find out 3 weeks before the fight that you're going to fight him. And I think that's probably what it was.
Maybe. But I've been up close around fights before. And again, I don't know enough to give you the correct information. I'm just telling you from my point of view, from what I saw in the Kambosos fight, from what I saw in that fight, he appears to be going backwards right now. I mean, this is the guy who beat Lomachenko, you know, who was a ferocious, fearless fighter that was full of confidence. I mean, look at the way he went in and destroyed Richard Comey. Like, just...
I'm glad you said that. You know what Martin said afterwards? He was speaking of Fight Hype. He said he doesn't think that Tio has the power at 140. Maybe it's just that. He looks like a big guy, but maybe that power was ferocious at 135 and just not the same power at 140.
Or maybe he's just not punching with the same confidence or authority. You know, maybe a bit of that as well. I mean, physically he doesn't look that big and strong at 140, and I don't know, you know, I mean, you hear a lot of rumors about his lifestyle and, you know, I don't know. I mean, I just don't see, I think when he beat Comey, there's a lot to be said about the fear that you can put in an opponent. And I don't think there's any fear factor about fighting Teofimo Lopez at the moment. There certainly was off the back of Comey and the Lomachenko win, but not right now.
I think I agree with that. I think that plays a part psychologically. Anybody going in the ring with you. Let's talk about a guy that, in my opinion, should place a fear factor in their hearts. And I'm talking about Terence Crawford. Barack and I were in Omaha, Nebraska. We witnessed the almost 18,000 people in the arena, sold out arena. He brings them out. And he never disappoints when it comes to excitement, Eddie. We talked about this before about maybe he's not the biggest draw. We don't understand why, because he delivers every time in the ring. Vicious knockout over David Avanesyan. Say what you want about the opponent. He's coming off a 6 winning streak knockouts. He beat Josh Kelly prospect. So he's a guy that he won't get the credit for this win, but in your opinion as a promoter, watching that clip, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Well, first thing that comes to my mind is how on earth did they get 18,000 people in the arena when not a lot of people even knew about the fight? I mean, it shows you how big he is in Omaha, Nebraska. Amazing. Sure. Amazing. And like literally no one was talking about that fight outside of the hardcore. But this is the problem, is what I saw was a superstar, but he's just been promoted so poorly over the years for the ability that he has. And they should have built. The problem is you can't really generate much of a gate in Omaha, Nebraska. So Top Rank would have taken him out to bigger cities to try and generate more dollars, and it actually didn't work. But what you should do is just let people see that many people in the arena, let them feel the atmosphere, because the perception is that he's a superstar, and he should be a superstar because he's an unbelievable fighter, possibly pound for pound number one. I mean, what's he on, a 10 fight knockout streak, 7 fight knockout? 10
fights, exactly.
Like, I mean, look,
you know, we were there. We were there live.
Right, I saw you. The reason that Avanesyan is a sort of fringe world class guy, but Terence is just an elite guy that will just take you to pieces. And it's a shame because people just aren't looking to fight Terence Crawford. That's the reality. But they would do if the money was there. So you're a bit of a catch-22 where you need to find opponents that actually care about legacy over money. And that's very rare in boxing these days.
Eddie, do you think that that's true though? Sorry to cut you off. Do you think that partially it's that maybe Al Heyman doesn't really want Errol Spence to get in there with Terence Crawford? Do you think that is a slight bit of, not Errol, because Errol is a real fighter and I know he would fight anybody, but you think it's his team that is avoiding that fight?
The reality is that Al Heyman doesn't want to put any PBC fighter in with anyone that A, could beat them, or B, he doesn't have control of. So right now, Terence, he's not a PBC fighter, and Al's not silly. He knows he's boxing. He's probably thinking, this is a 50-50 fight, or Terence is the favourite. I don't have futures on Terence Crawford. I can't keep him in with a PBC stable. Do I want to let one of my guys get beat and therefore lose all the belts, all the control of the division, not be able to service my other fighters in a 147-pound division? The answer is no, and that's the reality. Most people know, I'm very confident that Terence Crawford beats Errol Spence. But the reality is, you know, it's like sometimes, I mean, you go back to the Warrington fight the weekend. we all knew how good Lopez is. We all knew how tricky he is and difficult he is. And probably, like, if you really want to play that game, avoid him. And you know what? If you want to play that game, maybe AJ should have avoided Usyk. But he's a champion and he didn't want to. And he wanted his belt and he wanted to defend his mandatory. And if you're good enough, you win. So, but the reality is Al and those guys, they need to become more almost, you know, from a business perspective, it's not always good, but they've almost got to become bigger boxing fans and go, come on, this is sport. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. If our guy loses to Terence Crawford, yes, we lose every belt in a division that's very important to us to service our other fighters. But so what? Like, we're wasting our time if we don't make fights like that. So that's just what I think, and that it just means that the deal's got to be perfect for it to happen, and that's a very difficult spot to be in.
And on one hand, I would argue you, but then I do know that you allowed, so to speak, Canelo to fight Bivol, but then again, Bivol is your guy as well. But Bivol was a very dangerous guy, and he still fought him. So I get what you're saying. It makes sense. You gotta, on one hand, I mean, at one point in time, you gotta say what's better for the sport, not just.
I get it all the time. You know, after the Bivol fight, Oscar comes out and says, "Oh, Eddie Hearn doesn't know what you imagine putting Canelo in." But it's like,
yeah.
Or would you just want to be in fights that you can't lose? I mean, I don't get it.
Yeah.
You know, and then people criticize you. Oh, you lost another world champion. It's like, yeah, because he was fighting a really good opponent.
Yeah.
Like, and sometimes you're going to lose,
yeah.
and then you work hard to win it back. But I just, you know, it's so bad for boxing when all you think about is controlling divisions and, you know, not losing to another guy from another stable. Of course, you never want to do that. But I don't see the value in. Just like Saturday was a tremendous fight.
Eddie, would you
matchup?
Would you still be interested? In the past, you've mentioned it. We all know that Terence is still a free agent. Would you be interested in offering him a long-term promotional deal or a fight-to-fight deal like you're doing with Canelo Alvarez?
I just don't see how you can make that unless he had a vision of actually doing something longer term. And why, you know, if you can go out and get 7 million or 10, whatever he got for Saturday,
right,
why would you go and, you know, it's like, the reality is that the actual commercial value is less than half of that. So how are you going to, you know, I just think, I don't know. I mean, unless we could come up with a site fee, you know, to land a Spence Crawford, you know, and I don't feel like there's any value in him fighting anybody else. You know, tell me another fight in the division that you feel is worth, you know, monumental money.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably right, but he's mentioned going up to 154 to challenge Jamel Charlo for all of the titles. But that's still
another PBC fighter, so
no,
he's trying
I
to
get it, but I'm talking about opponents. He mentioned what opponent makes sense, but maybe in Saudi Arabia, somewhere in the Middle East,
you know what?
the site fee makes sense.
He's probably better off signing with BBC, right? But the problem is
damn, that's Eddie being honest.
Yeah, it is. I'll give you Spence. And if you beat Spence, you can fight Charlo. The problem is getting Spence in the ring and getting Charlo to agree to fight Terence Crawford, and the money they all want to do it. It's a very it's very
tricky.
Difficult for everybody. But you know, ultimately, Al is not going to give up his guys and give up the belts unless Crawford is with BBC or has a long-term deal.
You might have to give up your Saudi Arabia plug, you know, in order for that fight to happen, you know. But listen, I kind of like the Lopez Warrington fight. I thought it was great. I was probably one of the few guys who said that Lopez would probably win that fight, you know, because I seen how great of a fighter he's become. But do you think, I didn't hear your opinion on that. Do you think that it was the right decision?
I felt that, like, after 6 rounds, things were looking terrible for Josh Warrington. And I thought he controlled the back end of the fight. I felt like he needed to win at least 3 of the last 4 rounds to have a chance of winning the fight. He definitely did that. But when I got in the ring, I'll be honest, I just didn't know. You know, I just thought, like, Lopez didn't give up in the back end of the fight, but he moaned. He didn't do anything. And I just felt that the momentum was with Warrington at the final bell. But Lopez had banked a lot of rounds. And when I heard 114, I thought probably what I would have scored it. And then when I heard 115, 113 twice, I was like, all right, champion, home territory. Yeah, I feel quite confident, which is, and obviously it went the other way. But listen, in any 115 one, this is where fight fans make you laugh on social media.
You know what's funny about this though, Eddie? A lot of people will say, oh, you know what, that's home cooking. Eddie paid off the judges, this, that, and the third. Nobody remembers these times. I think this is going to have to be an example. You're going to have to remind people. Remember when my guy lost at home.
I know, you're 100% right, Brett. You know, like that fight, 115, 113, either way, you couldn't really. I do think most people felt Lopez just edged it. But all those things considered, like you just said, and I think it's, listen, as devastated as we are, it's never a bad thing when an away opponent gets a tight decision, if it's right. And it was, you know, I don't think you can complain about that. You couldn't have complained about it either way. So,
and if you're a fight fan, entertaining fight, I mean, it warrants maybe a rematch. Maybe they can run it back. Sure. That's entertaining. And Josh
Warrington showed he's still an elite featherweight. So for me, there's a lot for him to do.
All right, you spoke. We mentioned Canelo Alvarez early a little while ago. So before this year is up, 2022, will we have some dates and opponents on 2023 for Canelo, for AJ, if those discussions have been happening? Can you talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I was disappointed because Sal texted me to say he wants to bet on Lopez with me on Saturday night. This was on Friday, and I was like, that's not a good sign.
Did you place the bet with him?
Yeah, well, we did, but then we changed it to a dinner. So I owe him a nice big dinner next time I see him. And then I messaged him after the fight with a picture of John Ryder, saying, you know, with me and John, saying, you know, do you want to bet on this one? He says that's going to be a big bet. So I think that look, John's the mandatory challenger. It's the perfect fight for Sal, you know, to what he says, run out before Dimitri Bivol. John's on great form. We've just got to look at where that fight could take place. And, you know, our plans for Canelo Alvarez is John Ryder and then Dimitri Bivol if he's successful. And that's the plan that we're putting together now. In terms of AJ, yes, you'll definitely have a date for AJ and an opponent before Christmas, but maybe not Sal. I think obviously he goes a little bit later in May. But, you know, that looks like the next 2 dates.
Sal has mentioned that he wants to fight globally, you know, all over the world. I mean, it makes sense. Ryder, Canelo, somewhere in London.
I would love it. I would love to do it in Mexico or London. You know, obviously, you generate a lot of money when he fights in America.
But in London, though, in London, can we generate enough for Canelo to be satisfied with the purse?
You know, not as much as you could in America, but at the same time, he wants to break boundaries. He wants to fight internationally, and I think it would be an incredible atmosphere and a great occasion.
You know what I always wondered? How do you keep a fighter like John Ryder happy when he knows he's not the A side, but he's your guy, but he's not your guy when you're fighting Canelo, maybe? So how do you keep him happy? How do you keep that relationship? This is a real thing.
Honestly, Brett, honesty. Like, it was like that when Bivol fought Canelo. You know, I actually said to Dimitri Bivol, listen, I love you. You've been asking for this opportunity forever. We've delivered it for you, but you know, I have a lot invested in this guy, and he's pound for pound number one.
So if you don't mind losing, no, I'm just kidding.
But then Frank Smith sort of took over his promoter, and the same with John Ryder. You know, John Ryder, if we deliver this opportunity for John Ryder, we've done above and beyond what we could have ever dreamed to do.
Yeah.
So,
good point.
You know, and the reality is, at that point, it's you two in a ring, may the best man win. I'm not going to start. I would never get up on my feet and start screaming for a guy when I've got two fighters in the fight. Never. But of course, you know, and John knows that. John's not silly as well. But if he did win, I'd be over the moon with it for him, just like I was for Dimitri. But you know, I'm close with Sal, and he's a superstar of boxing.
Eddie, before you get out of here, we don't know if we'll talk to you before 2023, maybe. But if there was one guy that's going to have a breakout year in 2023, that's going to become a superstar or a star in the sport, who's that guy?
I mean, I really feel like Jesse Rodriguez, although he's had a great year, like, I feel like next year could be the year of the flyweights. You know, I think we've got Julio Cesar Martinez, Sonny Edwards, Bam Rodriguez, Galakian. We must find an undisputed champion there. You know, I think we've got so many great young prospects, whether it's Dalton Smith, you know, whether it's Janae Boston, who won at the weekend, you know, on the female side, Beatrice Ferreira, going to be a superstar as well. So many to mention. Felix Cash, Ammo Williams is going to be a great fight. You might see the winner of that emerge as a runner in the middleweight division. Dimitri Bivol has had another, he's another fighter of the year contender. And I think he's going to have he could be fighting for 2 undisputed championships next year. So I think that so many to choose from. But I like Dalton Smith in the UK. I think he's a very good prospect at 140 pounds. And I have to have a shout out to a couple of people who have took big risks and come out the other side. Might not be necessarily always on the lips of people, and that's people like Ray Ford, who's like continuously said, "I'll fight anyone." Now finds himself number 3 in the world, and I think another special mention as well to Diego Pacheco. 21 years of age, 6'4", super middleweight. From downtown LA with a big Mexican fan base as well. I think he's going to be a real threat to the super middleweight division.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a lot of great fights. All right. Hey, did Finkel ever get back to you about Wilder?
Yeah, we're speaking. Yeah, things are good. Things are good. I mean, I don't know whether we're going to have Christmas together yet, but things are very positive. And like I said, we don't know what will happen or when, but with the communication is open, which is good news.
All right. Well, enjoy the party, the holiday party, and we'll talk soon. Thanks, Eddie, as always.
Cheers, guys. Take care.